which stands for Instant Transformation Moment. And we call it that because we use the fast-acting 3Q method to activate spiritual intelligence. So we're going to go into the 3Q method shortly so we can all experience our spiritual intelligence together, and for our own benefit, of course, and also for the benefit of the whole world. Because as a group, when we activate spiritual intelligence, we have a bigger impact on collective consciousness. But before we go into the 3Q method and experience spiritual intelligence, I want to spend a few minutes today on looking at the new paradigm of the third millennium. And to help me talk about that, I want to share with you an article I wrote on this topic called The New Paradigm of the Third Millennium. So I'm going to show it on the screen now, and I want to read excerpts from this article. Just selected the article, and hopefully you're seeing it now. Just check on that to make sure that you are seeing it. Yeah. So you should be seeing on the screen now an article entitled The New Paradigm. So it begins with a description of the first millennium paradigm, or belief in the existence of a separate creator God. The premise of theism is that the way to know the truth about reality is to believe something with conviction. And of course, in the first millennium, the belief system was in the existence of a separate creator God. We'll find this in Western faith tradition in the form of Christianity, and also in Islam and in other parts of the globe. Now, the paradigm is materialism. Materialism is based on the premise that the way to know the truth about reality is not to believe anything, as in the first millennium paradigm, but to understand the world on the basis of the evidence as interpreted by materialist science. And of course, as we know, the point of view of materialism is the belief that everything is basically material or physical, including consciousness. So it's based on the idea that the brain creates consciousness. Well, we now know that's not true, but that only became when the third millennium paradigm emerged. The third millennium paradigm is secular spirituality. And as it says here in the article, secular spirituality is based on the premise that the way to know the truth about reality is firstly to experience reality, not to believe anything about reality, as in the first millennium paradigm, and secondly, to understand experience not from the perspective of materialist science, as in the second millennium paradigm, but from the perspective of post-materialist science. It says here further down in the article, the spiritual intelligence paradigm combines the non-materialism of theism as a premise with the empiricism of materialism as a methodology. Thus, the principles underlying theism and materialism combine to form the foundations of spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence therefore represents the synthesis of theism and materialism, and thereby supersedes the paradigms of the first and second millennium. Consequently, spiritual intelligence is emerging as the new paradigm of the third millennium. And the article goes on to talk more about the qualities of spiritual intelligence. And the concluding paragraph here is, therefore, celebration knows no bounds. Everyone who ever hoped for a better world has reason to rejoice. A new era is beginning to unfold, guided by the spiritual dimension of intelligence, representing the next stage in the evolution of collective consciousness. Now you'll find this article on the SQI website, sqi.co, and if you look in the right-hand side here, you'll find it at the end of the first column on recent posts. So that's a quick survey of this article on the new paradigm of the third millennium, spiritual intelligence. So let's now have a look at the 3Q method for accessing spiritual intelligence. And I want to describe this method to you. And at the same time, you can follow along by following my description of this method and experience, so we can all experience our spiritual intelligence together. Now, this symbol you see on the screen now represents intelligence: IQ, intellectual intelligence; EQ, emotional intelligence; and SQ, spiritual intelligence. And this symbol opens out into the twin poles of attention. We have the object pole of attention and the subject pole of attention. At the object pole is everything we're aware of: thoughts, emotions, beliefs, self-image, all the states of body and mind. Everything you could possibly be aware of is located at the object pole. And at the subject pole of attention is itself, which is who is aware of objects of attention. And what we call, and this diagram here is the same as the last diagram, with the addition of the terms ego and soul. So when you're identified with states of body and mind, when you believe you are your thoughts and emotions, that's called being the ego. But when you're identified with consciousness itself, which is the true self, then you're being the soul. So this diagram on the screen now represents the human operating system. And the reason why this is called the human operating system is that this is how we operate. You're either being the soul, you're being one or the other, either from the ego state, identified with thoughts and emotions, state, identified with consciousness itself. As a human. This is why it's called our operating system. The only exception to attention are if you activate transcendental intelligence located prior to both poles of attention. And the other exception is you're at neither pole of attention. But apart from those two exceptions, you're either being the ego or being the soul. And of course, when you're being the soul, that's when you're activating spiritual intelligence. Now, the connection between the ego and the soul is this mechanism of attention, which is what connects ego with soul. So, to activate spiritual intelligence requires us to shift from the object pole to the subject pole of attention. And it turns out there are 3 steps which rapidly shift you from ego to soul. And these 3 are notice, feel, and be. So the new method of activating spiritual intelligence this method, you can use it in less than a second. Shift from ego to soul, from false self to true self, which activates your spiritual intelligence. So let's have a look. So step one is notice. And the question is, well, you simply notice the human operating system. Ego at the object pole and soul at the subject pole. And the reason why we have to remind ourselves to notice this is that we so often forget, don't we? It's so easy to think that I am my thoughts and emotions. And this is a very common state. In fact, it's so common, people presume that is our natural state. But it's not. That's the ego state of awareness. We have a perfect alternative to the ego state, which is to be the soul, which is what activates your spiritual intelligence. So step one of the 3Q method is simply to notice the fact that there is a subject pole of attention, that I am the one who is aware of objects of attention. I'm the one who's aware of my thoughts and emotions. I'm not my thoughts and emotions. Now, step two is feel. And the question is, feel what? Well, this is about feeling what it's like at the subject pole as awareness itself. And to do step two, to do this feel step, we use a breathing technique. So I'll describe the breathing technique now, and you can follow along and perform the breathing technique as I describe it. So bring your attention to your breathing now, and just discover that still point in the breathing of the in-breath, when you're neither breathing in or breathing out. Did you notice that? At the end of the in-breath, there's a natural pause in the breathing when you're neither breathing in or breathing out. It's important not to hold your breath. Just find that natural pause that exists at the end of the in-breath before you start to breathe out again. Did you find that pause? It's very short, less than a second. Just check it out again. Okay, now once you find that pause at the end of the in-breath, I want you to feel what it feels like in that pause. How does it feel in that pause in the breathing that naturally exists at the end of the in-breath? How does it feel? Feels peaceful, doesn't it? Did you notice that? Just check it out again. How does it feel in that pause in the breathing at the end of the in-breath? Now, once you find that peaceful feeling there, it's time to move to step 3, which is B. B simply means allow that peaceful feeling to go all over the body and mind. So step 2 and 3 taken together, one after another, amounts to first finding that still point at the end of the in-breath, feeling what it feels like in that still point in the breathing, and then when you find that peaceful feeling there, move to step 3, be that peaceful feeling, allowing that peaceful feeling to go all over your body and mind. Now, just confirm for yourself that you are now being the field of awareness. You're being awareness itself. And thoughts and emotions may continue to arise, but you're simply being the witness of these thoughts and emotions. You're no longer identified with them. In other words, you're being the soul, the true self, right now, as you're being consciousness itself. Now, this is the meditation space, and notice how rapidly we got there just by using these 3 steps: notice, feel, and be. So this is a rapid meditation technique. Immediately. And in the meditation space, you have access to spiritual intelligence. And spiritual intelligence gives access not only to peace, but all the other qualities of the soul: compassion and joy and love. You'll notice all these qualities spontaneously emerge as you're being consciousness itself. So this is called spiritual intelligence. And notice that you can use these 3 steps in association with any activity. Walking down you're in a queue, when you're talking to someone, when you're at work, in any situation, you can use these 3 steps to activate your spiritual intelligence. So this is a very portable technique. It doesn't require you to use the traditional methods of meditation, which usually require you to sit down in a quiet place and close your eyes for 20 minutes. Doesn't need that. This method immediately activates spiritual intelligence without any of those traditional requirements. So that's why we teach this contemporary way of raising your consciousness. So please experiment with these 3 steps today when you get time, or when you remember to: notice, feel, and be. And you'll discover that you can use these 3 steps very rapidly when you get used to them. You can, these 3 steps can be done in a second or less. So when you experience 3Q, your sense of self is derived not from your thoughts and emotions, but from your existence, which produces new perspectives and new ways of thinking and feeling, and better performance on a wide range of work skills and life skills. So please do experiment with this, and you'll discover a whole bunch of personal benefits when you activate your spiritual intelligence. And you can see here on the screen a summary of these benefits. And not only personal benefits, but social benefits, as this screen illustrates. So what we're doing here is we're improving our own personal experience, and when spiritual intelligence becomes the conduct of many people, we'll discover these result. So this method recommended, and it requires a bit for you to get familiar with these steps, but when you are familiar with them, you'll a whole new ability that you can use for the rest of your life, higher dimension of intelligence. Now, if you go to the web sqi.co, you'll discover a whole bunch of articles which explain the new paradigm of the third. We meet every Wednesday at the same time, Spiritual Intelligence Together, 12 noon, okay, every Wednesday. So I do hope you'll join us next week for another ITMO meeting, another meeting transformation from ego to soul, which activates our spiritual intelligence, representing the new paradigm of the third millennium. So I do hope you've enjoyed experiencing your spiritual intelligence today, and please remember to experiment yourself with this method so you can prove to yourself this actually does work. I like to use this method when I'm in a queue waiting for something, in a shop or in the car at the traffic lights. Just instead of letting your mind wander and repeat thought forms that you're familiar with, just waste time and put you in an ego state. Instead of that, activate your spiritual intelligence and enjoy the beauty and joy and love of your soul. This is a much better use of your time, and it also equips you to handle life situations in a much more effective way. So please do experiment with this technique and prove to yourself that it is the new way of functioning in the third millennium. So I'll say goodbye for now, and I hope to see you next week at the same time. Bye for now.